Hey everyone, welcome to Inside Quest. We're the secret society for building a better brain. Our goal is to bring on amazing people who can help you pick up the power of your intellect. And if you're looking to enter the inner circle of mental mastery, there's no better guest than the man joining us today. He is a story journalist who has found unimaginable literary success by immersing himself in bizarre and at times dangerous worlds. His ability to dissect, codify, and recapitulate different belief systems through narrative make him an effective, albeit unconventional educator. A thoughtful and thought-provoking interviewer, he's known for getting to the undiscovered heart of human truth and earning the trust of some of the most guarded and secretive celebrities in the world. This rare talent for non-judgmental psychological probing and examination has made him a much sought-after journalist who has delivered groundbreaking work to prestigious publications such as Esquire, Rolling Stone, Details, The Source, New York Newsday, and the New York Times, just to name a few. His decade-long tenure at the New York Times, in fact, earned him not only acclaim, but also the ASCAP Deems Taylor Award for Excellence in Music Journalism. He's a cultural reporter, music critic, columnist, and 7-time New York Times bestselling author whose work is raw, insightful, and frequently controversial. His most recent work, The Truth, an uncomfortable book about relationships in which he turns the piercing light of his psychological assessment upon himself, is an unguarded tale of self-transformation that builds brick by brick with a fiercely journalistic pursuit for the inner truth. And as he retells his recursive hunt for the broken pieces of his own belief system that left him deeply unsatisfied with his relationships, he reveals not only the methods by which he improved his own situation, but also some universal principles of knowledge acquisition that can be applied to any arena of learning to incredible effect. Beyond journalism, he has appeared in popular media, including Curb Your Enthusiasm, music videos by Beck and 30 Seconds to Mars, The View, The Jimmy Kimmel Show, The Carson Daly Show, and dozens of other talk shows. He's also hosted his own radio show called The Inner Circle on Sirius XM. And, as if that wasn't enough, he's written the liner notes for albums by the seminal band Nirvana, performed on albums by Marilyn Manson, and DJ'd at clubs around the world, as well as writing TV shows for HBO, Fox, and the Cartoon Network. Please help me in welcoming the man who has taught covert governmental agencies psychological techniques on persuasion and authored the most frequently stolen book at Barnes & Noble, Neil Strauss.
Neil, thank you so much for being on the show.
Who wrote that intro?
That's me.
You wrote that?
Yes.
Recursive hunt was your phrase?
That is my phrase.
It's very impressive. That's a great intro. I want to take that for like my website copy or something.
Yeah,
that was great.
Please do. And so part of it is, and I get asked that question frequently, but the honest answer is it's really the guest. So writing the intro, because it takes me a lot of time to write the intro, but the intro forces me to view the person through a lens. And trying to break away from maybe the typical lens that either the world puts on them or they put on themselves, you really develop a different understanding. So I don't know, at least not from what I've read, I haven't seen people be affected by the truth in the same way that I was, and that intro is really truly how it impacted me, and I thought, whoa, the way that you were able to deconstruct yourself, and not only the willingness to do it, which is already super ballsy, but the actual way that you let the reader in on how you do it was so powerful that it begs the question for me, how do you do that? How do you deconstruct people? How do you get to understand them, whether you're looking at yourself or others?
That's a good question. No one's asked me that before. How do I deconstruct people? I don't know. I think it's just curiosity. I'm just fascinated by people. Like I remember my first editors at Rolling Stone and the New York Times would say, hey, what makes somebody tick? Like I love people. Like I could just as easily have anyone in this audience sit here in the chair right there and probably do an awesome 2-hour interview and find out what makes you tick. Especially someone right now is probably thinking, I'm boring. Did anyone think, oh, I'm boring, you couldn't do that with me? Did anyone think that? Oh, good for you guys. Not one hand, not one hand.
No, we're cool. We're cool. You want us.
But the person who thinks I'm boring is always my favorite one.
Right.
Because to even think you're boring means that you think you're not enough, which means you were damaged in your childhood to think you're not enough, and you're going to be the best interview. Right. So no, I just am fascinated by people and what makes them tick. So if anything, I would say like, probably like really natural curiosity, and also doing like you just did, doing the work and the research to find out who someone is, so I come to the playing field, with as much knowledge as I can about them.
Yeah, if you don't mind, talk about that, because it's your interview prep process is incredibly powerful. And so the promise that I make in the show is that if you watch the show, you will become better in whatever endeavor you're trying to embark on, because people can reveal things that may seem highly specific to them, but really apply to other things. The method that you use, I literally am going to steal fully, because the way that you talked about treating the questions that you yourself have written, treating them like you're studying for an exam, so that you never have to look at them again, like that's really powerful. But can you walk
Sure,
me through
I'll talk. Yeah, so first of all, I'll consume everything they've done. So especially if it's a Rolling Stone interview where I'm spending a couple weeks with them, I'll watch every movie they've done. I'll listen to every album they've done. I'll read any book if they wrote a book or there's a book about them. I'll get like knowledgeable at all the press. And then my goal is there's a story that exists about somebody. How can I move that story forward? And then what I'll do is I'll write down, as I'm doing this, I'll write down every question I can possibly think of, pages and pages of questions. And then before the interview, I'll kind of like you did, I'll think about my first question hard, because the first question sets that tone. I'm like, oh, it's something I haven't asked before. I had to stop and think about it. I'm going to enjoy this experience. So you did a great job of that. Thank you. Yeah, look at that little smile. They're so self-satisfied. And the other thing is that I'll observe. I'll really watch. There's a smile where you're like, ooh, that felt nice. And then the secret is I'll put that away, and then we'll have a natural conversation, and I'll know where I need to get to, but I'll study it beforehand. Yeah,
the level to which you observe is very apparent in the book, and watching you observe yourself is really fascinating. Have you, is any of that codified for you? Have you read books on how to observe? I know in the game you obviously touch on some of the techniques to pick up indicators of interest. So there's certain things that you look for when it gets specific like that, but are there generalized things that you look for in behavior to tell you who that person is?
No, I think a lot of it's intuitive, but I think it comes from all those, you do all these Rolling Stone interviews, and the last thing you want to do is put someone's lies into print, so you're trying to watch when they're being sincere and when they're showing you their real selves.
Do you call them on it? Like if you know that they're lying, do you say something?
But in a way they're not going to be judged. So like if you interview some pop star and you're like, are you nervous about your album coming out? They're like, no, I'm fine. Whatever happens, happens. And you're like, but really, like you're not. I'm not going to say like, I'm not going to say that you're straight up lying to me. But I'll sort of dance around it, because also the other secret of the interview is as soon as someone feels judged, then they feel like they're on trial, and then you're going to get defensive answers. Whereas if they feel not judged, they'll start to show you the parts of themselves they don't show anyone, because they know they're going to be accepted. So being non-judgmental is super important.
Yeah, I saw that in your writing, you talking about how that's one of the key things in any interaction is when people don't feel that they're being judged, that they lower their defenses. But going deeper into lowering your defenses,
Oh, by the way, one more thing is that there are some things I codify. I will watch eye movements. I'll watch some body language thing. Like here's a great tip, which is really useful, is what's people's biggest tell? What's their biggest tell? If you're going to watch their body language, what body part are you going to watch for their biggest tell?
My gut instinct would be their eyes.
Right, but you won't. Do you guys know? Any guesses? Hands? Yep. That was it. Someone just called it out there. Feet. Right? Great. Awesome. So here's the reason why. Like with your face, people are always like, wipe that look off your face. You're being taught to control your face. Right? They're for sure like a lot of movements you can't control, like Paul Ekman talks about how when a real smile, the circular muscles around your eyes will crinkle, and that will contract, and that you can't control. But the feet will give you the tell, because they're not used to watching that. So if you're talking to someone, you see their feet pointing toward the door, right, away from you, you know they're kind of done talking, right? So the feet are a really good tell for people.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and then the key is, sorry, I can go on and on about this stuff because I love reading people. And then the key is, if you can anticipate their objection. But if you can say, oh, I see you have to leave before they tell you they have to leave, they'll feel more comfortable.
Is it that they feel more comfortable? Because one thing that I do to knock people off balance is I preempt their thoughts and tell them what they're thinking. And it may be in the delivery, but I'm specifically doing it to unnerve them.
And what's an example?
So if I'd really watch the face, and I get what you're saying about feet. I'd never noticed pointing, but you'll see people doing stuff like this, and let you know that they're uncomfortable. They've got energy that they're trying to pent up. But when somebody, you say something and they give you like just a little micro expression on their face, that if you spend enough time, so I've had the good fortune of interviewing well over, it's probably 1,500 people at this point. And so patterns emerge. Patterns emerge in answers, patterns emerge in body language, patterns emerge in facial structures.
Right.
So people can walk in and there's a lot you can tell about them before they say a word, from how they dress, how they carry themselves, everything. So if I see something on their face,
Right.
And let's say they come in, God, this is going to get really dangerous now, but
Right.
let's say they come in, they have what I call the pub brawler look. So they've got a wide
my
face.
look, right?
Yeah,
I
right?
look like I'm ready for a brawl. Yes, right.
They've got a wide face. They have a thick neck. Like
Right.
there's just a certain look. And there's been studies
Right.
done, and I know you're not never trust research over your own tuition,
Right.
and I respect that. But there's a lot of research that's been done on that and what it means in terms of testosterone levels and all that. But so if I get a guy and he has that look and he's
Right.
staring at me in a certain way, like one guy in an interview, I pointed at him and I said, "You have anger management issues."
Right.
Now he freaked out because he came from an anger management class to the interview.
Right.
So he's thinking, how the hell do you know that?
Right.
And because it was a guess, right? I was
Right.
stabbing in the dark, it was an educated guess, but I knew if I hit, now I've got him unnerved because he thinks that I can see something that he's not trying to let me see. And I have found, at least as I use it, that that's something that it shakes people's ability to feel they can contain what they want you to see. And from that, you can actually get them to confess because they get the sense that trying to hide it is futile.
Right, cool. I might do that for rapport, not to kind of knock someone off, but and I think there's a degree of intuition you use there. It wasn't just, oh, he had a thick neck and a big skull. You probably sense a low simmering sort of like a rage within him.
Right.
So I think you use some intuition there as well from
Sure.
your accumulated experiences with people.
No question.
Yeah, but for sure, I think it's everything. You don't just look at the feet, you're looking at everything. Their face, their eyes, their movements, the micro expressions, the hands, defensive body language or open body language. You're looking at all those things and then you're putting your intuition together. And I think like anything else, you learn it first looking for the tells and then you know it intuitively after a while.
Okay, and then what are you doing with it? Like that's where I find a lot of people are fascinated by it, and they may research it and be able to articulate it, but then in interactions with them, they never go beyond, say, matching and mirroring. So they'll try to match and mirror to build rapport, but they don't take it anywhere.
Here's a good example. When I taught a government intelligence agency this stuff, they told me about some of the things they would do. And there's something called the tip of the iceberg principle. Like you're saying, if you know one piece of information, they think you know everything. There was a guy they arrested, and they wanted him to confess. And they found out in their records that about 25 years earlier, they had followed him for a while, like 25 years earlier, and they had a photo from their surveillance. So when they put him in the van, in the police van, they tossed in the photo of them following him 25 years earlier.
Right.
This guy, and then they left him alone there for 20 minutes. Well, this guy is freaking out, thinking they've been following him for 25 years of his life. So the tip of the iceberg, it's like one piece of information, someone assumes there's an iceberg underneath the ocean, but the truth is it's just a tip floating there with nothing to back it up. So what do I do with it? Create rapport is an important thing. Everyone wants to be known and to be understood, and helping somebody feel safe in that way. So for sure, in interviews, to get somebody to open up. When I was doing the game, to sort of really connect and make a connection with someone, so that when you left later, they'd be really excited for you to text or call.
Right.
And then just in life to have deeper, better, more meaningful conversations, and also to be wary that you really don't know. Right? It's really just an educated guess. Maybe it's a higher thing, but you really don't know. You may think this person might be angry, maybe they're just nervous. You're not always right. And I also do it, for me, it's a skill set that I'm always testing. So if I thought someone had an anger issue, I might ask them, and then if I find out yes or no, I get to move forward. Like when we're doing the game and learning about learning all this kind of skill set for interacting with the opposite sex, we would do this game where we'd be eating somewhere, maybe, and we'd see another table, maybe there's a man and a woman there, or could just a couple guys or a group, and we'd try to read that table, everything we could guess. What do they know each other from? Is it from work? Are they friends?
Right.
How long have they known each other? What's their relationship? And then we'd go discuss and talk with that group and find out if we were right or wrong and get that feedback.
And were you at that point basically compiling you test the hypothesis, right? Yes, this one was right, this one was wrong.
Right.
So from that, I'm assuming you have some sort of mental construct anyway of pieces. This means this means that. So give us a couple things that you picked up on, like what could we quickly tell about a couple at the table? What would you be looking for that would be very clear indicators of X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, I think you're actually getting the feedback and you're learning as much intuitive as making the rules, because there is no rule that really works 100% of the time,
sure.
right? They're all just guidelines, and you're putting it together. But things you can tell by a couple at the table. I mean, first of all, yeah, you can see where the feet are pointing, right? You can see the body language, is it open or crossed? You can see, is somebody leaning in, or somebody leaning back? You can see, is there, kind of tension in their bodies? Are they relaxed? Is somebody laughing at what the other person says? Are they looking uncomfortable? There are all kinds of, there's a million things. And also, like at the center point of the table is somebody trying to cross the center point, like uncomfortably try, like on a date, somebody will try and uncomfortably cross the center point of the table to hope for some, connection. You can always, all these little things you can watch.
Now, were you guys telling narratives about them or just trying to isolate a moment?
Like profiling them.
Okay.
Like, there are just amazing things you can do. Like, one of the guys, when I was doing this intelligence stuff, they taught me how to get somebody's PIN number for their bank card. You can meet somebody within 15 minutes, get their PIN number.
What?
Through a conversation, and we tested it. I won't say it, but it worked.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, because rapport is a powerful thing.
Wow, apparently so. Now, so anyone hearing that, I'm sure is tempted like I to say, okay, that will work on the feeble-minded, but I would never do that.
My wife, she said the same thing. And after I told her that, I still proceeded to get it from her within 10 minutes. Yeah.
At least you are her husband, so. But yeah, they did, I can't remember who it was, maybe Jimmy Kimmel or something like that, where they had somebody go out on the street and get people's passwords to the internet, and it was ridiculous. People would say, oh, I can't tell you that. And then they would say, oh, just tell us what it was like. Oh, it was the name of my high school. Oh, cool. What high school did you go to? And then they would say it.
Right. No, it's insane.
Like, what is happening?
No, it's crazy. Human nature is fascinating. It's fascinating.
So that is exactly why I wanted to go down this rabbit hole, and I know that we could keep going. And guys, the reason that this stuff is fascinating to me, and you guys have obviously heard me talk about it before, the reason it resonated with me so much is, and I don't know if we use it for the same purpose, but it's definitely the same techniques. For me, once you understand somebody, once you really peg the human emotion, that's why I was trying to differentiate between capturing a tableau, a moment of this person's uncomfortable, they're drawn to this person or whatever, versus a narrative of this is a husband and wife, they've been married 35 years. Now you're profiling a lot more, right? You're taking a lot more information, you're telling a narrative. Because when you understand somebody's motivations, you can, the politest word is orchestrate, right? You can orchestrate them. And when you think about running a company, which you guys will either run departments here in this company, maybe one day go on to run your own company, orchestrating a lot of people is what you do for a living, right? So you have to find a way to very rapidly identify the motivators as well as the current emotional state. So when somebody puts a meeting on my books and they come into the room, you can tell right away, where's this meeting going? They don't have to say a word, right? Based on posture and what I know about them historically. But being able to both emotionally profile them in the moment and get a more deeper understanding of their drivers, I've found to be incredibly useful.
You want to know what motivates someone. For most people, it's not money when they're working. Here's another simple example of how I used it recently. Someone who works with me, I think one of the key things that I look for is can you learn from constructive feedback or not? A lot of people have a problem, which is if you say you did something wrong, someone hears it as I am wrong. So I noticed with someone I was working with me who's great. I gave him the feedback, and I just could tell he was just in a funk afterward. So then I was able to have a discussion with him, this exact discussion, and say how it's awesome. Like, you want to be great at things, and a way to be great, and how I learned was from getting feedback and knowing it's coming from a loving, caring place. And maybe it didn't come from there growing up. But
there's two really, really powerful things in that, which I want to go deeper into now. So powerful thing, number one, you realized he was in a funk. And I already, I think, understand well enough. You're going to say that was intuitive. But that was intuition built upon body language, the way he was talking, the way he was holding his face, all that stuff that is hopefully teachable.
Lack of eye contact is the big thing. If you're ever talking with someone they can't look in the eye, they really have an issue with you.
Yeah, that's a great
if somebody
point.
Can't, either if you meet someone they can't look in the eye, they just might be really shy or awkward or uncomfortable. But if somebody can't look you in the eye, like, they just don't want to see you.
Yeah, and especially it sounds like maybe in this case where they started being able to, and then after what they perceived as criticism, then they stop. Now you've had a real change in behavior. And then the second part of that is you were willing to confront them on it. And the two-part breakdown is, I think, one of the and it's a little mundane.
Support rather than confront. Support them on it. like validate what they're feeling and explain, because if you don't if you swallow your feelings about someone and never discuss it, it turns into resentment, and that'll drive apart the relationship, whether it's a working relationship or a romantic one.
It's a fascinating example of the power of the words you choose.
Right.
Because saying confront versus support is a universe of difference that sets you up really, really differently. Thank you for that.
Right, cool.
I will steal that as well.
Yes, steal it all.
And hopefully these guys will also.
Look, your words are, by the way, your words are very aggressive, right? Confront, steal, and when you talk to somebody, I'll use it to throw them off their balance.
Yeah,
they're very interesting.
True.
Yeah,
it's true.
Right?
Now you really want to go deep?
Yeah.
That's anathema to my personality, and it is a technique I use to overcome the fact that all I want is for everyone to get along. That's actually true.
Right, and I'm going to make them get along.
By force if I have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's funny. So that really is, aggressive language is something that I use to stay focused. Yeah, It's very, very well pointed out. So walk people through, if you would, so your willingness or your ability, first of all, to recognize when something is off, and then your willingness to support them.
Right.
How did that work when you realized you weren't happy with the way things were going in your own life? How did you, because in the book, you walk people through in real time all the steps.
Right.
How can you condense that at all to sort of a through line of self-understanding that these guys could use to identify their own baggage that they carry around, which you wrote about very well recently on your blog?
Sure, yeah, I think that it's a great shift. It's really easy to see what's wrong with others, but it's really hard to see what's wrong with yourself. And it's amazing. So all the skills I just talked about, I would say don't help at all for self-understanding, because you're so close to yourself, and you have your baseline is, well, I've been with myself for all these years, and so you have no clue. Like I always say, like trying to see yourself is like trying to touch your right elbow with your right hand. Everyone else can do it, but I can't, right? And this is why the book we're talking about took 5 years to write, versus another book, The Game, took 2 years really. And this one took so long is because it was so hard to see myself. And a friend of mine who was kind of like a mentor to me would point out everything that was going on, and I just could not see it. It was insane. It was just a blind spot. I thought, like, all the books I did, the Motley Crue book, Marilyn Manson, the Rolling Stone articles, even The Game, where I observed these pickup artists and their flaws and foibles, I was always the normal one looking at the crazy people, right? And like I was like the voice of normality. That's what I thought I was. Like, I see it as it is. And The Truth was the first book where I realized I was just as crazy as them.
Right. So, but how do you come to that realization? Like, you, honestly, if the book really is as you experienced it, right? By the end, you have fundamentally changed your belief system, your sense of identity, everything. And it is a journey, man. And I really was blown away by how raw you were and willing to share that process, because I think that process could be so powerful for people in their own life to because if I can abstract it for a second, here's how it felt from my perspective with the most aggressive language I can come up with.
Yes.
You start with this hypothesis that the world is wrong, right? That the world has closed me into a box that just isn't natural.
Right.
And then you, because of pushings from friends and life circumstance, you realize, okay, I'm going to try to embark on therapy. But you reject therapy and decide that basically it's all bullshit. But you have this really beautiful way in the book of never letting your beliefs calcify into dogma, which I found really, really powerful. And I don't know if that's something that you do on purpose, but would love for you to talk about that in a second. Because through the whole book, you always seem willing to question. Like, I think I'm right, I think they're all fools, but maybe they're not, right? And then we would move on to the next bit of, ooh, the world kind of shrinks. I was wrong about that, but they're still all wrong about this. But there was this constant self-reflection. Is that something that is purely intuitive, or do you have a strategy, questions that you force yourself to ask, or?
Your question raises a bunch of thoughts. One is there's fixed mindset and growth mindset, those two ideas. And I think having a growth mindset and being open to new things, to change, to expansion, to whatever's going on, recognizing you can learn from other people is great. I was thinking of writing like a little essay or a small book called In Praise of Low Self-Esteem, because there are two kinds of wounds. There's the wound that makes you think you're less than others, and there's the wound that makes you think you're better than others. And the less than others, at least they know they have something to work toward or learn. The ones who are there have nothing to learn, and it's like the biggest tragedy because they just live their lives in the dark, thinking everything you do is great and ignoring all the results. So there's probably something to be said positive for low self-esteem. I would probably say it's a combination of that, the growth mindset idea, and also just learning from your experiences that doing something and failing and letting that be a learning lesson. So letting the failure be a learning lesson. Okay, I'm doing something wrong. Humility is the most important thing you can have for change. If you really want to have a big change, like a lot of people come just to hear what they already want to hear. Like codify this into 5 principles I can then apply to my life. Your codify is the word, and I'll codify some self-awareness for you. Right. But humility to recognize, what got you here won't get you there, as the saying goes, right? And to say at some point, if you really want to change and are really stuck, I know nothing, I'm letting go of everything, and I'm sort of gonna relearn with a childlike mind.
So that is, in the book, is the moment of sort of finding yourself empty.
Right.
But how does one then rebuild after you? Yeah.
Sure. In fact, I talked with a lot of artists, and the artists who've had the longest careers are the ones who have a childlike way about them. They just sort of live more in the moment than projecting into the future, getting settled down by the past. So I think it's a general truth to really see everything fresh in some way. So do you want to talk about how you rebuild, or some tools for self-awareness?
Why don't we start with the tools for self-awareness?
Right.
Because I think it'll help people get to a point of being able to rebuild.
Cool. I'll give you a simple one, then I'll give you a deep one. One is learning how to listen to feedback, right? There's 4 things when someone gives you feedback or criticism, however it's intended, whether ill or positive. And so one is not to take it in, but to kind of catch it. I think of it like a catcher's mitt. If you tell me something, you come across this way, I'll grab it, and then I'll look at it, and I'll think, okay, is it true? If it's true, cool, I'll put it in and learn from it. If I think it's not true, cool, I'll throw it away, no harm, no foul, I'm not gonna dwell on it, right? And I think everybody needs this in this world, because most of us are on social media, and we're all getting all our thoughts are getting picked apart, all the time, so we really need this more than ever. Then the third one is you get it and it's a maybe. Well, I'm not sure. You said this about me. I'm not sure. What do you guys think? What do you think? I'll ask my friends and I'll ask other people and get some feedback. And if it's true, well, cool. Maybe I'll learn from it. If everyone's like, this is total nonsense, ignore that dude. I throw it out. Right. But then there's a fourth one, and this is where the real growth is. Do you know what the fourth one is?
I don't.
The fourth one is you get it, you throw it out. I'm talking to you, and then maybe later I'm talking to you. I get it. And I'm like, no, that's not true, I throw it out. And then later I'm talking to someone else, I get it. It's the third time it's come back to me, I throw it out. I'm like, wait, maybe I gotta take this thing a little more seriously. And it becomes a maybe, and then it becomes a yes. And that's when the big growth thing is, because you kept ignoring this thing that was in your face. So the best feedback, like where you really grow, is you keep getting the same feedback, you keep dismissing it. At some point you say, wait, maybe they have something. So one way I do this is, I get together a group of people, and we sit together once a week and talk about the stuff going on in our lives. I find group therapy really powerful because if it's just one-on-one, I can just say I disagree with you. But when 4 or 5 people are saying, hey, dude, no, you're really coming off like that, or you're really having this problem in your relationship and maybe need to look at it, and 5 people are saying it, it's pretty hard to dismiss them.
No, so that begs a question for me, and I think from some of your blogs, I have an idea of the answer, but it'd be great for these guys to hear, and then in case I'm wrong. What is the goal of all this learning for you? What do you see as the purpose of that, the purpose of life?
Yeah, sure. The goal of all this learning is to get to a better place of happiness and acceptance in my own life. It's funny, there are all these books about happiness, right? I think 10% Happy, all these books about happiness. And there's a problem, I think, with that goal of reaching for happiness, which is you've got other emotions, right? Sometimes you're gonna be sad, sometimes you're going to have anxiety, sometimes you're going to have fear. We have many emotions. Sometimes you're going to, and if you feel like I need to be happy all the time, when you're not happy, you're going to feel like something's off. So to me, one of my goals is acceptance. So I'm trying to reach a place of acceptance in my life. So, but what I think of it is this, and someone said it in The Truth, which is you're born pure and fresh and vulnerable and spontaneous and in the moment, and slowly, through life experiences and your caregivers, you get loaded with a lot of baggage. And I think one of the goals of life is how much of that baggage can you cut away before you leave this planet?
How many people do you think are like Justin when it comes to baggage?
Justin.
In your blog, you have a blog article called
that
Justin
guy.
Thinks He Has No Shit or whatever it's called.
What he's talking about is on the blog. I did a post about a bag of shit, which is the bag of shit is the lie we walk around telling ourselves, and we just look for more evidence that it's true and throw it into our bag of shit, like I'm not good enough, or I'm better than them, or whatever it is.
Right.
Do you know what your bag of shit is?
That's a good question. I've never thought about it in those terms. So in my terminology, it's all about the skills that I lack. And it is a massive amount of skills that I lack, which I judge against my stated goals and what I need to do to, reach my goals.
So the bag of shit is, I'm not enough as I am. I need to accumulate skills to be complete.
I'm going to push back on that. And so if I looked at the world that way, as if it were a value judgment on me, that's not. So imagine somebody who, God, do you love a sport or anything like that?
Surfing.
Okay, surfing, perfect. So you love it, and you love being out in the water, and there's the fun of having the key to that private part of the beach, and just having the key makes you feel special.
Right.
Or not even special, you just enjoy that, right? And then walking in the sand and feeling it under your feet, and it's a beautiful day, and it's just, you see dolphins out, and so you're enjoying every bit of it. You haven't even gotten to the water yet, right? But you get into the water, and now you're doing it, and you think, whoa, it'd be cool if I could stand up. And then one day it's like, I'm loving everything about this. Some days I stand up, some days I don't, but it'd be cool to learn how to do one of those kick turns, right? That's how I live my life. I'm if all I get to do is walk on the beach and feel the sand under my feet, I am truly happy, because trust me, I spent 8.5 years of my life thinking all I wanted was money. And came up emotionally bankrupt, and I lived my own version of having to dissect, who am I really, what am I doing, why do I feel like shit when I'm making a ton of money, so what is going on? So I've been through that, but I am still incredibly moved by the human capacity to gain new skills. Just gaining a new skill at something that I care about is fun. It is, and you make a really cool distinction, which I don't want to derail you from, because I think this is where you were headed, but that there's a huge difference between needing to always be happy and enjoying your life. Now, my wife is the center of my universe, truly, and I act in accordance with that. And the only times where I find internal friction in myself is when I let her start slipping from the center. And when ambition begins to take center stage.
What do you mean let her stop?
So imagine that I'm just spending too much time focused on work, and I don't take time to really engage with her on a meaningful. We work together, we drive to work together, we drive home together. So we're spending a lot of time together.
So it's easy to spend time, but not quality time.
Right. So, and there have been times, absolutely, where there's things going on at work where I have this huge desire to accomplish a given task, and just from a time perspective, it begins to suck me out to sea. And at those times, I have an internal warning system. It starts to feel wrong, and then it becomes very easy to recalibrate myself by spending time with her. And that's really how it feels. It's recalibrating my priorities, remembering the thing that makes me feel most grounded and connected in this world, and honestly, the thing that makes me feel most adventurous, because I think when people have something strong at home, they're more willing to take risks, they're more willing to be adventurous. It's certainly how it feels for me. But those are the times of conflict.
I mean, other people are adventurous and seek intensity as a way of avoiding all the stuff at home too. Just quick question, we can move on from it, but I'm just curious. This is a great way to find out about yourself too, so just because I'm asking, you can ask yourself these questions, but this is my belief, is that we're running on this operating system, and we're all running on this operating system. This operating system was programmed in our first years of life, right? Because we're born with the architecture of our brain all there. And then, we're born with our neurons, we're born without the architecture, and the architecture is built by our childhood experiences. So all these connections are made whereby, I think a child makes, this statistic is what the popular one, I don't think it's accurate, but 700 new neural connections a second. So a 3-year-old has twice as many neural connections as we do. And then as you grow up, as new ones are forming, there's a process called pruning, so the ones you don't use go away. So your brain is really shaped and built by what you're seeing with your caregivers growing up. Basically, my friend, he's in the truth, he would tell me over and over, you got everything you wanted in the game, why are you still unhappy? Why your relationship's not working. He would have these conversations with me till he was blue in the face. And I would just fight against him. I'd push back. I'd tell him all the reasons why he was wrong. I'd text him why he's wrong, because I'd think of counter arguments later. And it was I was arguing against my own growth, because the things I found the thing I was the most resistant to was what I needed the most. So it's hard. It's so hard to see yourself. And we also have a psychological investment in remaining the same. So it's like you have a friend, you're always trying to maybe cheer them up because they're depressed, or help them with their self-esteem because they're down, but you'll find that people will psychologically fight to hold on to their story because it's all they have.
So why, you talk about defense mechanisms, what is it that people use as a defense mechanism, and why do they use it?
Sure, yeah, the defense mechanisms are, there's so many we use. One's, external, globalizing things. Like, I love when people say, like, oh, all Swedish people are like this. Like, I'll give you an example. My wife was born in Mexico, and we were talking about this stuff, and her mom used to throw things at her and beat her, and we were talking about the effects that might have. She's like, well, all Mexican parents are like that. Right. But it doesn't make it okay, and they're not all like that. There are probably exceptions, and I'm sure there are, right? So what is globalization? Making it just a universal, so people are like that. People do these things. So that's one. Another is minimization. It wasn't that big a deal. Another one is, getting defensive, getting angry. Another one's, shutting down. We have amazing degree of defense mechanisms. They all make sense because we're super vulnerable kids growing up, and we have to survive often like a crazy or weird world, and so we develop these defense mechanisms that do it. Somebody described it this way. If you think there's a city that has to protect itself from foreign invaders, so it builds a wall around it to stay safe. But later on, the foreign invaders go away, and then the city still stands with the wall up unnecessarily. And that's what we are psychologically. So
is it the guiding light then for you in terms of what to adjust your behavior towards is enjoyment, long-term enjoyment? Enjoyment,
I think the guiding light is not to look to other people or other things to decide how to do your own behavior. Not to look to science to decide what's right. How little of a concept of self do you have? So to me, the guiding light is inside. And really, if you can clear away the fucking nonsense and the mess and the bullshit and reach that place that knows everything and is true to stuff and follow that guiding light, it's the only one you need.
Now, so as somebody who says it's very hard to see yourself, which I would agree, the guiding light though is hiding within yourself, how can people go about, because understand my framework for a second. So we've got a big company, 1,300 people. Every day you're running against somebody you use the analogy of running software basically in your brain, right? So they've got a program that is not serving them.
Right.
At some point you have to find out if it's serving them, you have to know what the purpose of the program is. And if the purpose of the program is merely to keep you emotionally safe, and by safe I mean free from conflict, pain, whatever, then their programs do a relatively good job because they will avoid, they will take a lesser job, they won't do anything to make them really face inadequacies. So, okay, fair enough. But if it's meant to help them with long-term enjoyment, it's a very different paradigm, and there's going to be certain things that they have to break through and realize about themselves in order to actually accomplish that.
And so you're talking about the people who are at your company, right?
Sure.
You can't change them. Right? You said, how do I change this, or how do you can understand and then see if that works within your company culture. But what happens when you think you can make someone change or cause someone to change or even expect to change and they don't change, then that leads to resentment, and that's where probably most of the problems in the world come from.
Well, man, honestly, with that, we are out of time. But thank you so much.
Thank you for that.
This was great. Thank really fascinating. It was a lot of fun. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. This man has absolutely lived up to the promise of really looking at things and giving a no bullshit interpretation of what is going on. It truly is an honor, man, to have a conversation with you and go that deep and get interesting and look at things that are really real. You can go to neilstrauss.com. He's got a lot of really cool stuff. He's got the Inner Circle, which I think people can subscribe to. You also have the Society. I don't know if it's open enrollment, but you can go to societyinternational.com and check it out. This guy's up to a whole lot of stuff. 7-time New York Times bestselling author. Check out his books. They are wild. They are amazing. They are controversial. And they are worth checking out for a glimpse inside of a very unique individual's mind. This is a weekly show, guys. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, and you can find us at InsideQuest.com. And if you want tickets to a live taping so that you can come and be around people like this and get to engage in the fun, hit us up. You can get tickets on InsideQuest.com. You can follow me at Tom Bilyeu. Until next week, my friends, be legendary. Take care.
Thank you. That was a pleasure.